Right, so I think the next thing to do before running it too often and for too long is to sort out the cooling system. There are various hoses of different sizes and shapes. Starting at the bottom, we've got a alley outlet from the bottom of the radiator down there, and there's a short piece of hose just down there, and that goes into a metal piece that runs along here. Then we've got another short rubber hose just there, another one here between the water pump and this elbow on the side of the block. So we've got straight piece, a short straight piece there, then like I say, that's like a metal T-piece down there, so this comes up here. We've got an elbow here, which shouldn't be too difficult to replace because I've got a box of various hoses and shapes and all sorts of things. The only possibly tricky one is this top hose, which is all wrapped up at the moment, but it does still, it's a little bit flexible still, but the problem might be it's quite wide down this end, but it narrows where it joins the top of the radiator, so that could be the awkward one. If anyone's got any recommendations for top hose on one of these engines, please let me know. What's beneath this blue tape, I have no idea. I'm not quite sure why it's there. And it's there as well. Whether it was just to try and preserve the rubber, I'm not sure. But until I get this off, I won't know what it's like underneath. I don't think it's going to be too pretty, but certainly, whereas these should be fairly easy to replace, these ones down here and this one, I may just have to live with it for a while and see if I can sort of reuse it, at least in the interim, until such time as a better replacement comes along, because I doubt that I've got anything that's narrow here and flares out to this sort of fitting down the bottom. So that one I might have to reuse, but all being well, we can replace that one, the other one's down there, and the one off the water pump there. I think that's all of them. I don't think there are any on the other side. I think they're all clustered around here, which makes life a little bit easier. So I've doused these with some WD-40 for starters. I'm just going to go and see if I can free up some of these and make a start. I'm taking the hoses off. Once it's got fresh hoses on, I can put fresh coolant in. Remember to close off the drain taps, which I opened up a little while ago. Close those off, make up some coolant, put that in, and then we can run it for a little bit longer, and then sort out the fuel feed, I think. So, one step at a time. Somewhat amazingly, the top hose actually came off reasonably well. I've taken the blue tape off and it's left this yellowy residue. And it's not the best hose in the world, but there's still a little bit of flexibility in it, so I might just have to use it for a while until something better turns up, but I will have a look through the box of treasures just in case. I did think possibly of not touching this just so as not to risk damaging it, but it actually came apart quite easily. And I'm kind of glad that I did take it off, because underneath I found this, which looks a little bit second hand. I'm assuming there's a thermostat in here, so I'm going to have to clean all this out. I can see an edge of something there, so I assume some sort of thermostat arrangement or something in here. So I'm going to have to clean all this crud out. A nice clean thing. Clean all this out and just see how this comes apart. Not quite sure, so it'll take a little bit of figuring out, I think, but I'm glad I actually had a look in there. The other hoses, the clamps appear to be loosening off nice and easily, so they shouldn't put up a battle at all. What I might end up doing, I mean, I'd rather not do, but possibly take off the housing. That's the sender for the temperature gauge, which works. I was pleased to note that when I had it running before, so that, if I take that off, there are 3 nuts holding this on. Take the hose off, and in theory this will come off because this is steel, and obviously this is aluminium, but it should come apart reasonably well, so I might end up taking that off just so I can give it a proper clean out and have a proper look inside the waterways in the head, just in case they need cleaning out as well, because if it's like this in here, the chances are it's not great elsewhere. So I think the first thing I'll do is clean all this up, take that off and have a peer in there and see what I can see through there, and then take a view on whether to take this off or whether this will actually come out free off whatever it needs to do in situ. So that's a bit of an unknown at the moment, but I think the rest of the hoses will come off fairly easily. Okay, a quick update on proceedings. I made a start on the cooling system. I've removed all the hoses, the top hoses off. This thermostat doesn't easily come out, so the learned people on the forum have told me that the best bet is to take the whole housing off and put it on the bench and then look at it from there, so I'll have to do that. The pipes are off, the hoses, that one. This is like a T-piece, one end of which goes onto the radiator, the other one goes off into the water pump down there. It's a little bit fiddly to get at, and getting them off the old ones where the rubber had gone rock hard was a bit of a palaver. This one on the water pump here joins this elbow, and because the gap was only about 1/4 of an inch when that's on in place, there's only about 1/4 inch gap between it and the water pump, so that had to come off. So I'll give that a bit of a sprucing up, I think, while it's off. And at least this way I can have a peer inside the side of the engine block and just see what the passages are like. I might try and flush it through, depending on what it looks like. It'll be interesting to see, once the thermostat housing's off, it'll be interesting to see what it's like under there. That'll give me a good guide as to what the internals are like. So that's where we're up to so far. So I think I'll start cleaning things up a little bit and start digging out some suitable hose. Been through my box of hose goodies and dug out some that should be roughly the right diameter, so I can use some of those. The top hose is this, and it's wide at the head end and narrow at the radiator end, but whether there's any new ones of these around I'm not quite sure. There is still some pliability in it, but I don't know if I can soften it up a bit, but I might just have to use that as is for now and look out for a better example or an alternative way of doing things. It may be that I'll have to find a hose that's the same diameter as that, a hose that's the same diameter as that, and then just get a metal piece made that adapts from one diameter up to the larger diameter at this end. So there are options, but you know, I'll probably just try and use this for now. I'll try and soften it up a bit and see if there's any life to be had in it. It could be worse, but it could also be better. So that's where we're up to anyway. I think I'll start cleaning down the side of the block while things are a bit more exposed. It makes it a bit more pleasant to work on. So it's time just to give this a bit of a wash down. I've covered the floor with loads of old weekly classic car newspapers, which come in quite handy for that. They're very absorbent. So let's just rinse off some of this muck and make it a bit more pleasant to be around. And the downside is it does smell a little bit, but it does the job. As you can see, some of the hoses that came off, because I didn't want to damage the outlet on the bottom of the radiator, I almost had to sort of peel these off the metal pipes that they were pushed onto, because I didn't want to damage them in any way, whereas these are sacrificial because they're not reusable. So I had to sort of punch holes in them and carefully peel them off around the metal rather than trying to prise off the hose in one piece, because that risked damaging some of the metal pipes and I didn't want to do that, whereas these are going to be replaced anyway. So fairly motley assortment of old hoses down there. hopefully it'll look a bit better and work a bit better, because obviously I want to try and run the engine for a longer period of time now, so I need to get some coolant in it, even if it's a fairly weakish mixture of antifreeze and water, just to sort of test things out and see what the radiator's like. But it needs something in there before I run it for any length of time, so that's the objective next, I think. Get all this watertight and ready for action. Okay, well, it may not look it, but that's actually a lot cleaner than it was before. I'm going to go and clean up the elbow that goes on the side there. Let's go and have a quick look at that. Right. Just got it on the bench now. I've started cleaning up the surfaces where it joins onto this side of the block. There were some thin paper gaskets which I expected, so there's a little bit of sealant or something gloopy, so I'm just in the process of scraping that off. I'll do this one as well. This one I've done about half of it, and then I'll do this one, clean it up a little bit, and that will be ready to go back on once I've found some gaskets, or made up some gaskets that'll fit there. But that shouldn't be too tricky to sort out. And that can go back on once I've put a suitable hose on there, because if I put this straight on the side of the block, I can't fit the hose on then, so you need to fit this and the hose on at the same time and sort of squirrel them both together at the same time, and hopefully get it so that this lines up properly with the threads in the block. But it shouldn't be too tricky, so I'll just crack on with that and I'll go and have some lunch, I think. Oh, I think that's looking a bit more ship-shape now. Just give it a quick clean up, just so it's all good to go on. So I think now I just need to find some gaskets now, and then we can do something about that, I think. Hopefully I'll find something hanging up somewhere, saves making any. But I'll just have to see what's lurking within.
That's the same.
Have you found any yet?
I think that's the same.
Have you actually held them up to the manifold yet, just to see if they're
Well, I held one up.
tickety boo? Are they right, are they? Let's have a look. That'll do, isn't it? That one's thicker, isn't it? Is that one thicker?
Oh.
Ever so slightly. There's not much in it.
Wait,
they'll do the job if need be. Is that
No,
the same?
that's
That's the same as that one, isn't it?
Right. Yes.
See if you can find one of those which are fractionally thin. If you can't, we'll use two of those. But
These. That. Is that thinner? I mean,
it's just
that's a bit too wide.
they'll do the job. That's probably a bit thinner, isn't it? That's probably closer to what was there before. They'll do, won't they?
There's one with 3.
Oh, that'll do.
There's
Spot
one
on.
with 3.
Yeah, I don't think we need that one.
Yeah.
Oh, good job, well done.
That, I thought that'd take longer.
Yeah, I did as well, actually. Oh, just sorting out a bit of hose for that elbow that goes on the side of the engine. I found some old stock Dunlop with a nice old label on it, so that'll do the part. And I've found a couple of proper Jubilee clips, because we want the right ones. Don't want any of this modern rubbish on here, so this is still quite flexible, so hopefully it'll do the job. I just need to clean this one up a bit, but they're both the matching size and both Jubilee, so they'll look the part, nothing too shiny, not too grotty, so that'll do just perfect. Okay, well that's that elbow back on now. Just cleaned up a little bit, just so it doesn't look too shabby. These are all back on, new gaskets, copper grease on all the threads, proper Jubilee clips, old stock, some old stock Dunlop rubber hose, so hopefully that'll work. Nice little sticker. So slowly but surely it's starting to look a bit more shipshape. So this sort of floats around, it's a T-piece. It needs a piece of hose going down there and down there into the radiator. I'm not looking forward to changing those, to be honest. A bit of a palaver to get at, but I don't think I can put it off any longer. Let's go and find some hose that'll fit that. But it's looking a bit better this side of the engine now anyway. Right, so I've just been getting some clips together, Jubilee clips together, for the two lower hoses which go down on the side of the engine block. And rather than get some new clips, I've been having a root through a box, and I found some old ones which are pretty grotty, but I've actually cleaned up quite nicely. It's almost a shame to hide them actually. We've got two, I don't know how visible these are, but we've got two Cheney number 2 double grips. There's one there and one there. I'm not sure how obvious they are. And we've got a Jubilee made in England. So those three are all made in England. And this one is a bit more unusual. It's a Python made in Australia. So I don't quite know how well these are going to come out on the camera, but they've cleaned up to an acceptable standard. And rather than have shiny brand new clips, I'd much rather have something restored and genuinely old, because they just look so much more in keeping with the car. Again, like I said before, for like freshly painted things, you don't want shiny new stuff on a car that isn't shiny and new. It's different if you're restoring the car completely, but if you're just sort of recommissioning one, using this old stuff with these old markings on, it's a lot more satisfying, I think. So there we go, a full set of rejuvenated clips ready to go on, and I make up some bottom hoses out of this old stock hose that just happens to fit perfectly. So onwards and upwards. Okay, we'll skip forward a little bit in a quick update. I have changed the lower hoses, one down there, one down there. They were a real fiddle to get at. I didn't bother filming it because it wasn't the most exciting viewing, but they were awkward because they connect to this sort of T-piece here which goes down, then one goes to the water pump, the other goes to the radiator. So they're all in place now. That's already done. And the next thing to do was whiz off the thermostat housing. The thermostat itself doesn't just lift out. Someone on the forum was kind enough to show me how it goes together. And this is how the thermostat assembly is. Now, this is held on with 3 nuts on these studs. They took a fair bit of getting off, a bit of heat, because I had visions. These aren't the largest studs in the world. I had visions of just snapping those off into the alley casting, which I really didn't want to do. So a bit of heat got those off, and even with the nuts off, it was quite a job to get this separated. So I had to heat the casting up of this, and then with a few taps it came off okay, which was great news. So that's off. So I think the next thing to do is, I've cleaned it up a little bit. I haven't finished yet, but I have cleaned it up a bit. So I think the next thing to do before going any further is to pop this into a pan and just see if the thermostat actually works or not. If it does, great stuff, and we can go ahead, make or find a gasket to go on there, clean this all up, and this can go back on. I can try and sort out the top hose and then think about filling it up with some coolant. But the next thing really is just to see if the thermostat itself is any good after all these years of just sat doing nothing. That's something of an unknown. Let's go and give that a go. It took a while to get it going. I think even though the fuel tank's been drained and fresh fuel put in, I think there's bound to be a bit of sludginess in the bottom, and I think it's pulling it through. So it took a little while to get it to run. And it just sounds a little bit flat. And it's not warm yet, but She runs alright once it's running, but it could take a few goes to get it to go. I thought I'd run out of battery, to be honest. But well, thermostat's opening. Great news. Right, I've just had this pan of water on the boil in the kitchen to test the thermostat, and it appears to work. It opened up and it's slowly going back down again now, or shortly. Well, that's good news on the thermostat. That seems to work quite nicely. Now, the only slight fly in the ointment was when I was, because this was on here obviously, that way, and I had to give this a few good taps to get it moving. I had the blow lamp going and the hammer in the other hand and just giving it a little tap, but while I was doing that I managed to nudge this little brass fitting that the heater goes into, the heater feed there, the sender goes in, and unfortunately it crushed the thread slightly. It's my own fault, I should have taken it off, but just one glancing blow and that did for the thread, and also crushed it a little bit, so it could be retrievable, but fortunately in a box of goodies I found an unused one, so that got me out of a slight pickle. So that'll do, that'll fit. So really this just wants a clean up now, and I know that it works, and I'll go and get the giant box of gaskets and see if I've got one suitable for this. Right, let battle commence. See what we can find for that in here. I'll save you the misery of me rifling through these hundreds of gaskets, so I'll report back if and when I find something. Right, okay, well the gasket's sorted out. I apologise for the lighting in here, it's not great, but it's not a studio, it's just an old garage. So the plan now, clean this up, clean these threads up a little bit, and then all that can go back together. It's a bit scabby in here, but I've seen worse. It's all coming off fairly well, this old gasket material. And I have to be mindful that this is aluminium, so it's fairly soft compared to a cast iron head, so I don't want to go too berserk with the cleaning, but just want to do enough that it's a nice flat clean surface. Okay, well the housing's been cleaned up and popped back in place, lots of copper grease etc around, so I've just had a fertle through a nice old box of washers, found 3 suitable washers, so let's get it bolted down. Got the old trusty spear point spanner out, so we'll just nip these up gently. I don't want to over tighten anything. If anything, I'd rather under tighten things than nip them up later, because if any of these studs go, then I'll be creating a mountain of work, which is not the objective if I can do things better. So let's just get these whizzed on, try and do them fairly uniformly, not too tight, and then we can start looking at the last 2 hoses to refit or replace, depending on which they are. The big one I'll have to reuse, this small one I've got several which can be cut down and adapted, so that'll be alright. But for now I'm just going to concentrate on getting these on without hopefully damaging anything in the process, but you just never know what's going to happen. But if you use a nice small spanner to begin with, there's no risk of winding anything on too tight from the outset. That's the theory anyway, but as with anything old car, anything can happen, so I'll just carry on with that gently and report back once it's done. Okay, that's that one on. Fresh Jubilee clips all round, so really I've just got to figure out what to do with this top hose now. Right, well that's all back together now. There we go. I've spruced up the top hose a bit, just cosmetically, because it had the old sort of yellowy residue from the tape, the blue tape that had been wrapped all around it, which didn't look great. So I've just spruced it up. It seems to still be somehow, you know, some pliability left in there, so it's a bit of an unknown quantity, but until I get some coolant in there I really won't know what's going on. All the other hoses on the other side have been replaced now, all new clips, new old stock clips. So I think the next thing to do will be to get some antifreeze in and then make up a not too strong a mix of antifreeze, because you want the antifreeze because it's got anti-corrosion additives in it, if you like, which is good, especially when you've got an alley head. But the stronger the concentration of the coolant, the more searching it is. And if there's any weaknesses with any of the hoses, i.e. this top hose, then that could cause problems. So I think initially I'll put a weakish antifreeze mix in, run that around a bit, it'll pick up any sludge, drop that out, and then put the slightly stronger one in once I know that this is actually watertight, and then we'll take it from there. I think that's a reasonable plan of action, but I think that'll do for now. I think I need to straighten up a little bit and have a bit of a tidy up. I hope that was of interest, and thanks for watching, and please subscribe for future updates. What do we spy here? Morris minor. Doesn't actually look too bad. And the remains of a 105E Anglia. That's some moggy, doesn't look bad at all actually, a bit faded, but otherwise pretty tasty.